Well, good morning, guys, and welcome to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
I'm here.
There you go.
So in the last episode, we showed you guys the beginnings of using the animal. We showed you the shield part of it, and we talked to you a little bit about what we were going to be using it for. Now, in order to use it for that, we have to go ahead and add on some sides. So let's head over to the bench, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, the whole purpose of getting the animals we talked about was being able to replicate a taper like this on a speaker, so that when we went to put this back into the car, it would have this angle to it so that the speaker, if it was designed to angle towards you, would angle towards you. Whatever it was doing, it would do the same once we got done putting our new speaker in it. In the last video, we showed you how to make a flat panel, which is fairly simple to do, but we showed you using the shield portion of the animal, or as they like to call it, the smart frame sled, how to use it and keep your fingers from getting anywhere near the router bit as it rides the outside of your template. To make this shape, however, it's going to be a little different, because you can't just set this flat and have it do that. It's not going to work that way. This needs to be at some form of an angle like this or this, and that's where these come into play. These are going to allow us to do that. So let's go ahead and open them up. Now, if you notice on here, there's a bunch of preset holes, as well as two slides here and here. And then there's little measurements right here so that you can count. And these are designed to go right here onto this, so that you can then adjust its ride height. And you can also move it over to here if you want to do something that's fixed. That's why these all line up. So there's a lot of different uses for this, and then of course there's a whole system that Mobile Solutions sells to make all kinds of attachments for it to do even more than what we're going to be using it for. But now we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let's just go ahead and attach these sides first. Now, before we assemble it, let's go ahead and take a look at all the hardware that we get. We get 4 screws, we get 8 washers, which means that each screw is going to get 2 washers. And then we get these cool little insert nuts that are going to go into this hole here and allow the screw to attach to it. These are kind of similar to something you get at like IKEA. Now what we want to do is go ahead and take our end, put a washer on it first, put another washer on it, go ahead and set it in there. This has a flat head end on it. That's so that you can line it up straight. Put your finger underneath. It uses the same Allen head style screw as the handles do. Go ahead and put it in there lightly. Line the other one up, repeat the same process. Now, we don't want to tighten these up super tight right now. We just want to go ahead and get them on there so that this moves up and down. We'll repeat the process on the other side. So now that we have this assembled, we still have a little bit more information we're gonna need about this here. First is, how tall is this actually gonna be? Now, this has this little lip around it. We don't wanna measure to that. We wanna measure to this inside here. And looking at that, we're about 1 1/8 inch. Now, knowing that, we have to figure out how we're gonna make this shape. And we wanna kind of replicate it, so it looks like it has some form of a base plate here. Since this is 1 1/8, most of the time I like to make my bottom plates out of a minimum of 1/4 inch. If I take 2 pieces of 1/2 inch, that's going to get me to 1 1/4 inches. But that's okay, because we're going to be planing it down anyways, so we can plane down that extra 1/8 of an inch. Now, if you're fortunate and you have some 1 inch laying around, great. If not, you could always stack 2 pieces of 1/2 inch on top of one another and then glue them together. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing we did when we showed you how to make this, but we're going to router this shape out of this piece of plastic. So I'll be right back. All right, so there we go. We have our 1 inch thick plug that we're going to plane down at an angle, but we need to know the angle. So there's a couple different ways you can figure out the angle. If you have this guy here, this is a digital angle. So what this does is this will ride on it, and as it tips like this, it'll display the angle here. You can also use something as simple as this by putting a square here, resting a piece of plastic on it, and then replicating your angle onto here. Either way, you need to get that angle. So you want to make sure you're on a nice flat surface, and then get your reading. We're getting about a 6.5. So now what we want to do is add that into this. So go ahead and tighten the screws up a little bit more so that it's not flopping around. Now we'll go ahead and put some template tape on this guy here, and we'll stick it to our board. There, and get it kind of in the center. Make sure it's stuck nice and good. Now what we want to do is take this and we want to tip this tray until it says 5.6 and then tighten it up. Once both sides are measured and right the way you need them, you can see we have this plate underneath it. Now what we want to do now is trim this off so that it's nice and flat, because we want this here to be the shortest distance, which if we measure is 7/16. So we're going to come here and we're going to mark 7/16. So we need to plane off that much. Now as we plane it off, that's going to give us a flat bottom. To do that, we're going to use this bit here. And what this bit is designed to do is to cut into this material slowly and remove this angle off of it, making this bottom flat. So let's head over to the router and we'll go ahead and put this in. Now we'll go ahead and bring this over. As you can see, this blade is going to cut into this material. Now what you want to do is do a zigzag pattern back and forth, planing over the material. Just come back and forth, do this way and this way until you've flattened down that first run. This is going to take a couple go rounds. You don't need to rush this. Now after you make your first pass, go ahead and raise it up a little bit and do your second one. So now that we have the angle piece made, we need this bottom plate. And as we said, we use the 6 5/8, which is just a tad bit bigger than this is. So what we want to do now is we're actually going to stack these two on top of one another and then put them onto the substrate we're going to use. Now we're gonna go ahead and drill a hole in this real quick. So now that we got this stacked on top of one another, as you can see, it's kind of thick and there's multiple angles. So you have like the circle and then you have this piece that sticks out. So that means that the ball bearing has to be able to ride on multiple areas. So you're gonna need something that's got multiple ball bearings on it to ride across all these surfaces. And we just so happen to have that. Now what this has, as you can see, this has 4 ball bearings on it. When we bought this specifically to do this. Now what this will do is this will go ahead and ride across those multiple elevation templates, and in the end it'll just give us one piece. Let's head over to the router, we'll go ahead and get this installed. So now what we want to do is turn this down to where our blade and bearing are almost at the same place, but our height is above here. So it's that delicate balance of blade, bearing, material, because you don't want to cut into anything. So you want to make sure that there's a bearing that's going to touch everything that you're trying to copy. Otherwise it'll cut into it. All right, that looks about right. We have the shape we want, we have our circle cut out. We'll go ahead and remove this, because what we want to do is go ahead and stick this back on, and we want to drill out our screw holes. We didn't want to do it with this still on there because there was a little bit of overlap and we don't want to drill through our nice template. So now we have the base plate. And the nice thing about it is it has this here, which is going to give us a perfect reference for when we're trying to line this piece back up. All right, so now we'll bring over our animal with our piece still on it. And what we want to do is, since it has these nice lines on here, we want to go ahead and put those onto our piece. Just draw those on here. Get your front one. Now the reason why we want to draw this line on here is because this is going to tell us this is our highest spot here, this is our lowest spot here. And knowing that is going to help us line this up onto our new one. So now we can go ahead and remove it. Now looking at this, we can go ahead and take a tape measure and we can kind of figure out where our highest point is. And on this particular guy, it's right here with this back screw. The center of this is our highest point. So if we set these two next to one another like this, line up that nub here and here, here, we can take our disc, set it on top, and if we line it up with this screw hole, we know that we now have it lined up right, because if this is the highest spot, directly across from it has to be the lowest spot, because it's a flat surface, because the speaker was mounted to it. So now what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and just put a little bit of template tape on here just to hold it in place, because we're actually going to screw it from underneath, but we want to line it up. Now we'll go ahead and drill a hole in it so that we can router our circle out, and I'll be right back. And voila, so we have our hole cut out and we're ready to go. Now, like we said, what we want to do is go ahead and screw them in from back. When you're screwing these things in, keep in mind when you're putting your speaker in, if this is the top and this is the bottom and this is left and right, your speaker screws typically go in two places. They either go like top, bottom, left, right, or they go here and here. So when you're screwing in from behind, you have to think about it and you have to go and places where you know your speaker's not going to be. So just play with your brain a little bit, turn it, and then drill the holes. That way you can still do your up, down, left, right, but now you've done them in a pattern that isn't going to be the same on the other side when you go to screw your speaker in. Now we'll go ahead and put some screws in to hold it together. Now anytime you are working with plastics of any kind, always pre-drill your holes. So the last thing we want to do this is where this nub is, we want to go ahead and drill a hole here for our speaker wire to come through, because this is where it came through from the factory. So now we'll be able to run the speaker wire out to hook up to the wiring. The thing to keep in mind when you're doing these is that there's a right and a left. So don't make two of the same exact things. You can make two matching parts. You can make two bases and then you can make two tops. But remember, if you were making a mirror of this, you have to rotate it 180 degrees. So this would be the point where the lowest is, and then this would be the points where the highest is. So this will go into the car, all good to go. We got this to do this thing with it. And with that, you guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.